Welcome to lesson 222, converting fractions to percents. I know in our last lesson we talked about converting fractions and decimals to percents. However, these fractions that we used either already had a denominator of 100 or their denominator could multiply to get to 100. So now these fractions, their denominators can multiply to 100. However, they don't do so easily. So instead of spending the time trying to figure out what number we multiply by, we can take this fraction and first turn it into a decimal like we usually do by dividing it, because 1 out of 3 means the same thing as 1 dividing by 3, or divided by 3. Now remember, when you have a fraction, you could take your fraction, and to do long division, it's like your fraction fell over. So that numerator goes on the inside, the denominator goes on the outside. All right, so here we're going to take 1/3 and we're going to change it to a decimal first. So 3 goes on the outside, 1 goes on the inside. And I know that 3 goes into 1 0 times. So I do 0 times 3 is 0, subtract, I get 1. Now in order to continue, I have to put a decimal here and on top in order to keep my value the same, because if I just put in a 0, it turns to 10, and we need to keep it as a 1. Now I need to bring down that 0, and I can look and see that 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 9. So there's your multiply. Subtract. Get 1. Now here's the most important part. A lot of students forget to go up and add the 0 before they do their next dividing. A lot of students look and say, oh, 3 goes into 1 0 times, and they put the 0 here. That's incorrect. Okay, we can't put that 0 up there until we add a 0 here and bring it down. Do not forget the bringing down step. So now we know 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. And if you notice, we're going to get a repeating decimal because we're going to continue to get 10, and it's going to continue to be those 3's. So we know that as a decimal, this is 3 repeating. So now to change a decimal to a percent, we know that we have to take this decimal and move it twice to the right. So 1, 2. So we can look at our answer one of two ways, and this is where you have to follow the directions carefully. If it tells you just to round to the nearest percent, then my answer would be 33%. If not, I can also write my percent as 33 and 3/10 repeating, because that's still going to repeat, it's still going to go on forever, percent. All right, so I want you to try this one on your own, and when you come back, we'll go over your answer. All right, so you have 8 on the outside, 7 on the inside. 8 can't go into 7, so we put a 0, subtract. We can add our decimal. Now we can add our 0 and bring it down. 8 goes into 70 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. When you subtract, you get 6. Add your 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. When you subtract, you get 4. Add your 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. Subtract, and I'm done. So now I know that my decimal is 875 thousandths. And I know I need to move that decimal 2 places to the right. So if I round my answer, it's going to be 88%, because the 5 tells the 7 to round up. And if I do not round it, it would just be 87 5/10%. And that's okay to have. You can have a percentage with a decimal on it. Okay, and we'll try it once more. You can try it on your own, and when you come back, we'll go over your answer. All right, so she has 6 on the outside, 5 on the inside. 6 goes into 5 0 times. So you should be seeing a pattern here. When you have a fraction, you always end up with a 0 in front. Adding the decimal, and then continuing from there. So after you add the decimal, you can add the 0. 6 goes into 50 8 times. Minus 48 is 2. Bring down the 0. 6 goes into 20 3 times. 3 times 6 is 18. It's 2. Add the 0. Right, and you want to be very careful to make sure everything lines up perfectly so that way you don't get that decimal in the wrong place. And then now we know that 6 goes into 20 3 times. And by now you're probably sensing that there is a pattern. You're always going to get 2 left over. 6 is always going to go into 20 3 times. So we know that as a decimal, it is 0 decimal 8, 3 repeating. So 0 and 83 hundredths repeating. So now I take my decimal and I move it 2 places to the right. And again, if I round my answer, it's just going to be 83%. Because here would be another 3 because of that repeating sign, and this 3 tells that one to stay the same. If I don't round it, again, I can have the repeating symbol, I can have a decimal, and I can have 83 and 3/10%, 3/10 repeating percent. Right, so you have a couple of different problems here. There are a few that might be able to change to 100. There are some that will not change to 100. So I want you to continue to practice both so that way you don't just get in the habit of doing one or the other. I want you to be able to change fluidly between the two. So I'd like you to try these 7 problems. If you have any questions, please post them to Edmodo.